Hi everybody, this is January 2nd, 2025, and this is one of a series of videos which is a form of therapy to recover from the trauma of watching my little brother with Down syndrome be locked up by the BC New Democratic Party for 588 days, and then he died at Burnaby General on April 23rd, 2024. So the background is Paul and I grew up together. We've lived about 13 kilometers apart for 30 years. And when I discovered that his group home had created what I believe is a fraudulent and forged power of attorney over him, meaning my 82-year-old Catholic nun sister, 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario, as his guardian. I complained to the police. But instead of investigating, the Burnaby RCMP tipped off the group home, the government group home, that I had complained, and they terminated our visits. We had an agreement that we could have twice weekly visits, once at the group home and once at my home. And I fought through every legal mechanism I could think of. I complained to every agency I could think of. And I complained to the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP in Ottawa, and I thought that my complaint fell on deaf ears. But what I didn't realize is that they had actually assigned an investigator, and they had ordered the Burnaby RCMP to investigate the fraudulent and forged representation agreement. And the Burnaby RCMP wrote me a letter. The officer in charge wrote me a letter on March 27th of this year, just before Paul died, saying that they had been ordered to investigate the fraudulent and forged representation agreement. And I tried to bring that to the attention of a judge, but I couldn't. Now, what I now believe is that the evil nun sister, her lawyers knew they had been tipped off by the RCMP that they had been ordered to reopen the investigation. And so they filed an application to have me declared a vexatious litigant. I'm the witness. And so they wanted to discredit me. So this was all going on in the background. And they had, there was a hearing in November where I explained to the judge that I'm disabled. I have a potentially life-threatening cardiac condition. I'm in the middle of doing my 10,000 steps a day right now. I'm at McDonald's. But I explained to the judge, I said, I've got a medical certificate saying that I can't appear in court for longer than 2 hours at a time. And so they had set the evil nun's lawyers. She spent about $500,000, about $500,000 on lawyers, or the Catholic Church has. And I said I can't appear for longer than 2 hours at a time. And the judge went past the 2 hours. And I said, well, I can't stay. I'm limited to 2 hours. Now, I have stayed on other occasions, but, it was because there was something pressing, or it was my decision. But it was not her decision to make, to recklessly put my life at risk and demand that I stay past this 2 hours. So she went ahead past the 2 hours on that day, and then for 2 more days. And she declared me a vexatious litigant. And there was every kind of irregularity you could imagine with the proceeding. The judge that we had been assigned, who I believe was Jewish, was removed from the case. And a Catholic judge was parachuted in at the last minute. Anyways, so I have applied for permission to appeal the decision declaring me a vexatious litigant, and that hearing is taking place in the BC Court of Appeal at 800 Smythe Street on January 15th. So not that far off. So I'm preparing for that. So please contribute to our GoFundMe account. I had set a goal. When this started, I had set a goal of $4,000, and I've raised $2,165. But this vexatious litigant finding is going to hobble me in all kinds of ways. You can imagine what it's like to be a retired lawyer and to be exposed to anybody that wants to take a pot shot at you. It's a, complete disgrace. But what I wanted to talk about today, and I hope that you'll stay and listen, is I just listened to a podcast of the psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a famous Canadian psychologist, world famous, who's now recently moved to the United States. And because he had criticized Trudeau, he's had the loss of his license threatened. But he has a podcast on the Daily Wire, and he interviewed, today he interviewed Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the official opposition in Canada, the leader of the Conservative Party. And one thing that I've corresponded directly with Pierre Poilievre, and I wrote him and I said, I think the podcast went on for about 2 hours, but they went on for a long time, and Jordan Peterson never once raised with Pierre Poilievre the number one issue of Canada's downfall since 2015, since the evil Justin Castro, I call him Justin Castro, came into power. He did two things, and I don't know exactly in what order, but he did two things right away, two things. He decriminalized marijuana federally in the criminal code. And he also decriminalized the killing of disabled people. So there had been a decision at the Supreme Court of Canada that that doctors could give disabled people injections to kill them if they ask for it, if they have a reasonable prospect of death. And the way it is now, of course, it's expanded and expanded and expanded. And since that time, so I believe that Justin Trudeau came into power on October 19th of 2015. 60,000 Canadians have been killed. And all it takes, I practiced law for 16 years and I was a divorce lawyer. And we had to wait a year and have a judicial approval of a divorce. But the Canadian government has paid doctors to kill 60,000 people since October 19th of 2015. And this has brought Canada into terrible disrepute. And the rest of I was trained as a psychologist too. That was how I started my career. I worked as a psychologist with the most profoundly disabled and capable adults. And so I know the impact of this legislation on the world's view of Canada. And Jordan Peterson and Pierre Poilievre, I've written Pierre Poilievre, and he's written me back. He's the only legislator that's actually written me back. And I said to him, are you going to roll back or stop this euthanasia program in Canada where doctors kill? It's called medical assistance in dying, which is a misnomer because the etymology of the word medical. It's from the Greek, which means to heal. And you do not heal people by killing them. And I believe that my brother was killed. That although he was incapable of consenting to it, the evil nun sister flew in when Paul had a stroke on April 13th. The nun flew in and she ordered that his medical supports, like his ventilator, he had had a stroke and he was recovering. He sat up, he squeezed my hand when I said my name, but she ordered that his ventilator be removed and that he be sedated to death, and that's what happened. So I believe, and I've told the coroner that that's what I believe happened, and I understand that there's an investigation going on. But Canada, the glorious history of Canada has been brought into disrepute by this shameful, there's no other place in the world. 5 out of every 100 Canadians who die are killed by the state. And you might think, oh, it's a great idea. You know, you stop people from suffering and the state doesn't have to pay for their upkeep. And, you know, so it's a win-win. But it isn't a win-win because there's no appeal. If somebody changes their mind, there's no appeal. The state has always been able to kill people. We've always been physically able to kill people, particularly vulnerable, impoverished, and disabled people. But we don't do it because it will destroy the fabric of society. And it already has. So I challenge Jordan Peterson to ask Pierre Poilievre one more question. Is he going to stop medical assistance in dying on his first day if he's elected Prime Minister of Canada? So that's all I have to say today. Take care, everybody.